Now, going over to the business blunder of the day, you have Washington Post. Well, they got about 250,000 cancellations after they refused to do a presidential endorsement. Now, usually when it comes to businesses, I'm pretty much always in favor of getting out of politics because, again, inevitably, you're going to offend about half of the U.S. population, and I mean, people are becoming more and more dug into their political feelings. They're becoming much more disgruntled or unfavored to the opposite side, which doesn't bode well for our country long term. Now, in terms of businesses, again, you're going to alienate about half your prospective clients. So I would say more often than not, probably good to not say anything at all when it comes to politics. Now, that being said, there are some exceptions. When you're a political, let's say you're a conservative podcast company like Daily Wire, that makes sense that we would endorse Republican candidates and people with conservative values. That makes sense. That's your core audience. That's your customers. That's the niche you chose to go after. Now, in terms of Washington Post, I'm actually going to call this a business blunder. Now, they chose to have no presidential endorsement. Now, for decades, you would call them, well, not for decades, past couple years especially, I would say, they'd be known as a far left, a leftist publication. I mean, they're owned by Jeff Bezos, who bought them out a couple of years ago. And I mean, the only people I know who really read them are people who, well, like myself, try to find as much information as possible, both left, right, and middle. But I mean, the average reader at Washington Post, they're going to be much more left on average. So they're really, and by not making a presidential endorsement, they're making a lot of those leftists irate, which is why I think they've lost, again, so many subscribers. Now, this is written thanks to Liam over at CNN Business, which somehow still in business, which he says, quote, more than 250,000 Washington Post readers cancel subscriptions in revolt or non-endorsement. There you can see the outside of their building there, which, pretty good granite building. It might be the might be the nicest thing about the publication. Now, according to the article, they say, quote, more than 250,000 Washington Post readers have canceled their subscriptions since the newspaper announced last week it would not make an endorsement in the presidential race, leading to a huge spike in cancellations, which, again, a lot of businesses, I mean, it makes sense for politicians, they make endorsements all the time, but a lot of businesses are making more and more endorsements. Netflix CEO, co-founder Reed, I would say foolishly, he actually endorsed Kamala Harris, and their cancellation rate increased by 3x, which that's quite a bit. But again, a lot of people have Netflix who are on the left and the right. It's not too politically bifurcated. Washington Post, though, mostly leftists who worship them. Now, they say, quote, the endorsement decision first announced by Post publisher Will Lewis resulted in the newspaper losing, 10% of its digital subscribers by Tuesday that evening. So then one day, bam. The paper reported, citing documents and two people familiar with the figures. The number did not take into account any new subscribers during the post that may have added since the same time period, which maybe you gain one or two people who are kind of middle of the aisle politically speaking who will appreciate that they're at least attempting to look like the guy in politics. Now, what I suspect more realistically is that they just know Kamala Harris is not very popular at all. And the only people who are voting for Kamala Harris, on average, are just people who will, quote unquote, vote blue no matter who, which is a huge motto of the political party. They actually don't like her individually. Truth be told, I think Biden would have had a better odds of actually beating Donald Trump this election. I think there's a lot of people in the Democrat Party who are maybe upset that they pushed Biden out unceremoniously and basically forced him out and then pulled in Kamala Harris. Now, they say, quote, readers and former Post staffers, including former executive editor Marty Baron, have labeled the decision as craven and cowardly, seeing it as a move to attempt by billionaire Post owner Jeff Bezos, an attempt to preventively bend the knee to a possible second Trump administration. Person with the matter told CNN that the endorsement of Harris has been drafted by the Post editorial board members before it is squashed by Bezos. Which, I was going to say, again, long term, maybe he wants to get out of politics, wants to be more of a center-leading publication, but again, that's going to take decades. I mean, CNN recently, they created so bad they actually bought out by another company. They're trying to be less leftist. I mean, so much of the culture is just entrenched in so many people. I'm not sure how realistic it is to actually get that kind of put into action. But again, 250,000 subscribers and 10% of their online subscribers just canceled basically overnight because they decided not to do any endorsement. Again, for the average person who tunes into the Washington Post, I think they probably would have, they were looking for that endorsement, as silly as that might sound. So I gotta say, Washington Post, that lack of endorsement, gotta say, especially in the short term, that is certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Again, trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you can click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or comment. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.